every night we would like put bug spray on before we went to bed. I can't remember which night it was. One of the nights I ended up taking a shower and forgetting to put bug spray on, and that was when I got my first bug bites. The bug bites liked the Asian blood better, so talk to Brandon and Jillian because they got way worse bug bites. The first day, so we got all of our bags, our hats, everything. Something that was also really stretching on the trip was that there were 20 of us, so we always had to travel in a group, and we always had to have our like translators or somebody with us, and so that was stretching our patience a little bit because we're like, okay, I'm ready. Yeah, let's go. I was surprisingly not as upset as I feel like I would be in Canada sometimes, and I learn this about myself every day, but it happened a lot last summer. This is just a little bit about me. When certain people are struggling with something, when I'm struggling with it, if they are also struggling with it, sometimes I don't struggle with it anymore. And it's not becoming ignorant to an issue, it's seeing that same behavior in me represented in somebody else, and I now see it from other people's perspective, and I'm like, oh, I don't know if I like that too much. The bad part of it though is that I don't acknowledge them and help them or listen to them and things like that, and that's where it's negative. Where it's positive is that I don't deal with it anymore because I'm like, it's like when you take a kid to the grocery store and another kid's having a tantrum, and then the little kid's like, oh, I'm never gonna have a tantrum again because that's literally so embarrassing. Maybe that happened to me as a kid. Okay, we're not getting into my trauma right now. I'm just kidding. It's not trauma. Thank you, Mom, for raising me the way you've raised me. I love you so much. And thank you for praying for me and interceding for me every single day. I love you. Also, that was crazy. Couldn't talk to my mom the whole trip. Didn't realize how much I'd actually miss her. What the freak? I still haven't called her. So, Mom, if I haven't called you or talked to you by the time you're seeing this, I'm sorry that YouTube saw it before you did. It's been crazy. I also haven't talked to Maya about this. Literally, how come I haven't told the people that are very close to me? Got us to take flyers and to talk to people and to be like, welcome to this fair. Really thrown in. We had no idea. The schedule we had gotten before going was not the same as the one we got there. And so I'm not going to speak on behalf of anybody else, but I had set an expectation of what I thought the trip was going to look like in terms of what we were doing on those days. Not what exactly, but where kind of we would be. And so I thought we were in preparation day. I didn't know that we were, I knew, but I didn't know that we were in missionary day 1. I thought we were doing prep. And so when we had started doing the mission, I was like, oh, we're doing this already. Okay. I'm not prepared mentally for this. Because I don't actually have to be prepared for something, but I have to know a certain amount of time ahead of time so that I'm not like, what the heck? But also that's something I learned, that you're not always going to have all the information, and so you just need to be patient and be okay with change. So anyways, we got in a big group of like 7 to 9 people, and we went in like the close area neighborhoods, and we were all kind of stuck together, and like one person would be like, welcome to the fair, have this, and then we'd all like hand them a flyer, and it was super awkward. We ended up going into school and inviting a bunch of kids to the fair as well. And also expectations. I thought that the fair was going to be like Peruvian version of popcorn, cotton candy, prizes, games, music, blah blah blah. Not really what I thought it was. There was like 12 information booths, and they were all about really important topics that need to be talked about in Peru. Some of them were sex trafficking, human trafficking, casual sex, toxic relationships. Those were the big ones. There was like abuse, social media and pornography. There was a counseling. There was like future telling, things like that. That is really common issues in Peru, and that needed to be vocalized. I'm not going to get into the details of it because I believe that it was appropriate for that culture, and the way that they engaged that community was necessary for that community. I didn't agree with it, and if we had done it in Western Canada or Western culture, whatever we call it now, probably wouldn't have worked. And so yeah, that's kind of all I'm going to say about the fair. The first day was a very humbling experience. Shout out to Pastor Tim, because he says, I was telling his wife this tonight. He says that if you don't humble yourself, God will. And on the first day of Passion Missionera, Let's push up the mental block. Okay, this is Peru. This is Passion Missionera. First day of Passion Missionera. I was humbled. God humbled me. We were sitting in the tent. Once everything was set up, we had invited people. We had learned a little choreographed dance, so we were kind of doing stuff. But then we didn't have enough translators, and we had too many people that could not speak the language, and we also had nothing to do. It was just like too many people with not enough work for the first day. And the first day is supposed to be slow because people are getting to know about it, right? And so, yeah, we were asked to do some things that we were a little uncomfortable with, and then we were going to do the choreography, and then we found out that the drama that we had prepared was done by somebody else. And so there were a lot of things that just didn't meet our expectations, and incredibly humbled. Like, they weren't bad. There was nothing bad, but it was just so funny because we're just like, okay, renting a Maria, sitting in a tent. I personally just drank water. I tried to get up and walk around a bit and be like, okay, what's going on? We were kind of asking, like, what can we do? But there's nothing for us to do. And that's okay because they didn't need us to do anything. We'd done our part of going and inviting people. Now we just had to wait for the people to show up and talk to the ones that we could and get engaged and take initiative and ask questions. And it was also really hot, so we were probably really just bogged down from that. And yeah, we've kind of processed a lot of the things with Jimmy and Kirsten. Shout out to Jimmy and Kirsten for taking the heat on that, and shout out to Pastor Steve for he really at the end of the day gave us the space to talk about how we were feeling, and we talked with our coordinators and they gave us some different tasks or brought in more translators. And I think having that open line of communication and realizing that this is a relationship that we're growing was very good, and very helpful for us to grow as a team and to adjust our expectations. Something Steve had told us, and that's why I'm making such a big deal about it, was because of something Micah had told Steve about just being uncomfortable. I can't remember what exactly he said, but he was like, Steve, I'm uncomfortable, but I'm glad I'm not comfortable. Or he said something like that, because imagine if we were comfortable. Like, why would we go to a space where we're comfortable, you know? And that kind of, whenever we were doing something later in the week, we'd be like, are you uncomfortable yet? Are you uncomfortable yet, though? You're like, oh, I'm so uncomfortable right now. I'd be like, that's a good thing. Praise God that you're uncomfortable right now. You know? And it was just like a theme that we had kind of had subconsciously, maybe. So anyways, that was the first day. I can't remember what we had for lunch. It was good, though. We had juice that day, too. Oh, yeah. Our second night, so after the first day, the fair day, later in that day, we ended up doing some evangelism. We got to do our choreography, which is really cool. Then we split off into two groups, and one group went to a church up a hill. Not as bad as climbing that mountain with Jake. Jake, that's still the worst mountain I've ever climbed. But we ever climbed one mountain. But it was like a big flight of stairs, a break, another big flight of stairs, hill for a while. Like, you could still see up the hill, like to the top of the hill. And then a flight of stairs, break, flight of stairs. And then there was a church, and we had to go and invite people to church. Otherwise, the church would be empty. So it's like, you just have to, they didn't know the service was happening. We're going and inviting people and bringing them to church. Or else, and if nobody invites us, like gets invited, then it's just us, the Passion Missionary people. So I think that's crazy. I think on a Sunday morning, if church starts at 10, we're all gathering at 9 to go invite people to church. I think we should do that. That'd be pretty cool. For all of the services that we had, there were the pastors would respond to me like, we've never had this many people at our church before. This is amazing. So I'm not sure if that was like because of the Passion Missionary people or if it was like congregation that had been invited. So that was really interesting. Lots of wild dogs. Hold on a sec. Let's talk about the dogs for a second. Because when Steve said that there were going to be wild dogs in Peru, I was like, okay, I will insert this is a picture of the dogs that I thought was going to be there. Like, I'm actually going to do any of this editing. Whatever. People had like poodles. There were like not huskies, but like there were a lot of varieties of dogs. And I was expecting one kind of dog there, a Peruvian dog. But there were a lot of different dogs there. So shout out to the wild dogs and the pet dogs. There were a lot of you. I just remember seeing a lot. And when we had gone to go ask people to come to church, we went up one street. It was like dog central. It was like dog versus cats. You were literally like getting barked at from every corner of this street. And they didn't stop barking until you left. But then when we left, another team had gone up. And so it was just like wreaking havoc, basically. Oh, yeah. Breakfast that day, we had like yam. Like on the third day, we did some prayer. I was on the evangelism team with Shelly and David, different translators though, so we weren't actually with each other, which was interesting because I thought I was going to be working a lot more with Shelly, and so I'm a little sad I didn't get to do that, but that's okay. And that day, I met my wonderful translator Paz. Maria Paz. She's amazing. Maria, I love you. Shout out to Maria. Anyways, Paz. I never called her Maria actually. Oh, I'd be like, oh yeah, Paz is my translator, and they're like, who's Paz? I'm like, Maria Paz, and they're like, oh, Maria. And then with Bill, Bill was David's translator, guys. Oh, Bill was amazing. Not Bill, it's Bill, and his name's actually Brandon, but he goes by Bill. Anyways, and then I would tell him, be like, oh yeah, Maria Paz, and he's like, who's Maria Paz? Who's that? And then I'd be like, Paz, and then he's like, oh, Paz, and I'm just like, yeah, but I think it's Paz. And I think I was saying Paz. And so I'm sorry, Maria Paz. Paz, I'm sorry if I said your name wrong this whole time. We met a lot of people that day, had really good conversations. We walked down the street and it was giving the previous day because it was the same street. And she's like, okay, so you're just going to like go and whoever God tells you to talk to, we're just going to stop and talk to them, ask them if they need prayer or anything like that. And then, yeah, just tell them about Jesus and preach to them. And you're just going to talk and I'm just going to translate for you. And I was like, okay, great. She's like, have you ever preached before? I'm like, yeah, but like with prepared sermon notes on the junior high Thursday night or Wednesday youth night, like not really. Like I'm trying to think, like I never actually had to preach the good news, never preach the gospel or the story of Jesus coming. I'm like, that's horrible. I'm a third year Bible college student and I've never done that before. I don't even know if I can confidently say that I have now because every time I talk to somebody or have that kind of conversation, which is not very often, unfortunately, I'm not the one that's doing the talking, which good. Thank God it's not me, but I'm just like, I don't remember what I say. I don't feel confident that I can do it because every time the Holy Spirit steps in and does the work for me. And that was number 4, I think, thing that I learned was that we're not the ones that do the saving. It's God. God does the work. We're just the vessels. We're just the people that plant seeds, but he's the one that will save people. He highlighted this tree and I walked over to the tree and there was a lady there and she had a few prayer requests. So we kind of prayed for her and then when we were done, she'd be like, oh yeah, can you pray for this too? And so God was kind of working through her and then Paz was like, I think she's distracted a bit. So we kind of chatted with her a bit more and then she ended up reconciling with the Lord. And so that was really cool. And then there was a lady from the church, I think, and she was bringing us to different people. And she brought us like 4 different people. And we were just praying with the people and bringing them to reconciliation. And it was just really cool because it was like, took that weight off of me deciding who to talk to. But it was God being like, okay, you're going to be obedient. And you went to the tree and you were obedient. And this lady, I think she knew we were there, but she wasn't like an affiliation. Like she wasn't with Passion Missionera. She was just from like a church and she like Casa de Dios. And so, and she was like, oh, you guys are doing this. Oh, let me bring you these people that need prayer. And so that was really cool. And then we sat with this woman named Margaret and she was amazing. We prayed with a few people, crossed the street, went to this lady who's selling whenever you got like a red and black bracelet, it was like from witches or something like that, or not necessarily from witches, but it's like a demonic bracelet or whatever. So we couldn't receive any bracelets or things like that. And there's a really cool story. Oh my gosh, really cool story about that. And so we were kind of talking with that lady for a bit and then went on to a different lady and her daughter was sick. And so we just prayed for her daughter. And then I was like, is there any way we could go visit her in the hospital? And she was like, yeah, if you guys come back at this time, like at 3, like we can go into the hospital and we can go visit her. And then we went and we talked to another merchant, and she was selling like avocados, and we just sat down. And like with the other ones, we were kind of just standing there, but with this one, we sat down and we talked with her for about an hour and a bit, and it was a really good conversation with all of the people that we had encountered that day. Because we also went to Mercy after that, which was a different area, and where they would hand out like triage. They do vet stuff, they do haircuts, they do all the like free clothing, things like that. We went there and we were talking to some people in the houses nearby and evangelizing to them. I got to pray with a woman whose mom has dementia and she just wanted a relationship restored. And honestly, every moment that I prayed or spoke with somebody, I saw that as like a testimony of God working in their life. Because I know that I didn't do anything. And I know God's going to do a work in their life. And so, even if there's no immediate response, or if it feels like nothing happened or whatever, just us going and reminding them that this is even a thing is like powerful enough. And she was like, yeah, like we just us being here, like not necessarily is like it's enough, like we don't have to do anything, not like that. It's just like we went, we prayed for them, we talked with them, we made connection, and the rest is up to God. And that's really cool. So I took pictures with some of these people because they're like, let's take a picture. And so I will continue to keep them in my prayers. But this one lady, her mom had dementia, and so we were praying with her. And with what I've been trying to say is that this whole day I had this ability to connect with them in the way that when I was growing up, my mom would always pray over our family. Pray, like I remember we would just be driving and all of a sudden she just burst into prayer, and she would name us off and pray for us and just go into tongues. And I remember sitting in the back seat kind of accepting it sometimes, and then when it got really long or she was talking with someone else, I'm like, this doesn't pertain to me anymore. I kind of roll my eyes a little bit. I'd be like, oh, this is so annoying. Can you just like stop so I can go back to not talking to anybody or go back to like thinking about what I was thinking about or talk to you about something random. And I didn't resent it, but I was not as I didn't understand it when I was younger. And um like even now, my sisters are in different walks with their faith and different, like they know about God and they know about Jesus, but they have different views or they have different applications of that. And I got to connect with a lot of people because they were like, yeah, that's so strange. Like you're 30 years younger than me, but both of our moms prayed for us and interceded for us, and none of our siblings are following Christ. I'm not even like the women there. Like I'm not even following Christ, but I want to today. And so they would like reconcile because they knew about these things or they believed in Jesus as a little girl, and then for some reason walked away. So that was just really cool being like, oh, that's so strange that all the people I'm talking to have the same experience as me, and we just get to connect on that. Then we ended up going to a different church, and Steve was preaching at that one, and that was really good. We always took notes, and I was like, I'm gonna look back at these later, but I didn't. I'm being so honest, guys. It was a lot. So I'm sorry, Steve, that I didn't really pay attention. But after that service, we had been kind of rushed out, and some of our team members had looked a little distressed, and I thought that they had gone out and like something happened, like they got hurt by a like stranger on the road or they got spoken to in a rude way. And so I was just like, oh, okay, letting them have their moment. Wasn't really too much. And Steve rushed us all back to the church. What did we have for dinner? I don't even remember. I didn't make a note of what we had for dinner that night. I just remember it being good. Maybe it was the soup. There was a soup that we had with a, I think it was a soup. Yes, it was. Because I remember, this is crazy. During evangelism, I was like, I want a boiled egg. I don't know why I wanted a boiled egg. And then at lunch, I had an empanada. Nope, not an empanada. I had something. It was wrapped in like a leaf and it had rice in it and then like the head of an animal and boiled egg. And I was like, yes, a boiled egg. And then later at dinner, we had the same head with a boiled egg in this soup that literally tasted like if garlic bread was a soup. And it was amazing. Garlic bread as a soup. I love it. Great idea. Anyways, then after that, we got called all into a meeting, and this made sense because the day before was our first debrief day, and so we're like, okay, gonna have another debrief. We talked about some of the highs. A lot of people had better things to say this day because adjustments were made, more translators were there. And then Steve told us, he was like, I have no way of saying this. There's no good way of saying this. And he had informed our whole team that one of our friends from Ontario had passed away. And there were a lot of emotions that were happening in that room at the time. We had taken probably 30 minutes. A lot of people just cried, and we just had no words, and we were just shook. Like, it was just so we're like, we're finally getting on our feet, and then this happens. This is 110% an attack from the enemy. Like, the devil knows. It was just something I felt the Lord was telling me, was that this is 100% an attack from the enemy, because he knows and is threatened by the things that's coming. But on the flip side of that, Cav is 110% with God right now. And that I was just saying that with like some of the people and David when we were hugging, and I was just like, God's got him. Like, I'm devastated that this has happened. I can't even imagine how people way closer to him than I was are feeling right now. Like, I had 10 interactions with Cav in the past year. And he's so incredibly authentic and himself and loves Jesus so much and just emulates exactly what the gospel is and asks brilliant questions. And he's not perfect, but he was just so captivating and the type of person that engages all kinds of communities. And it's just devastating. And it feels like it's like, oh, the team goes on a mission trip and something horrible happens. It felt like a canon event. It felt like we should have expected it. And because I feel like that's happened before, where a team's gone away on a trip to do good work and something bad happens at home. It's got to have happened at some point. I got the scripture verse, Psalm 55:22. It says, cast your cares on the Lord and he will sustain you. He will never let the righteous be shaken. And that was comforting for me at the time. I've processed a lot of the trip, and I've processed a lot of Cav's death, and we're doing another memorial on Sunday. So we had gotten that news that night, and we had all prayed together, and I'm not going to try and take away from any of the intimate moments we had with each other, but it was just crazy, and it still doesn't feel real. I've been talking to some people about it, and I'm like, until I go to young adults and I try to talk to him, or I'm like, where's Cav? Those are the moments where it's going to hit me. And that's, I think, a pattern that happens with a lot of grief, because for me specifically, because like, my friend's dad passed away a few years ago, and my papa passed away this year, and it's the same thing where it's not, obviously I'm upset, but it's not until I go to the cottage and I realize that he's not hanging out with us, or I go skiing and Nick's not there to take us or carry someone's skis, or he's not waiting for us at the top of the hill. And those are the moments where it really hits me, and I'm like, okay, so these people aren't in my life anymore, but they brought me to where I am. And that was one of the things Cav did for me, was really welcomed me to Glad Tidings. And I said this, he's like one of the first 5 people. No, obviously there was a lot of people welcoming us to the church, so not literally the first 5 people, but at young adults, like, he was incredibly welcoming, and had a really long conversation with me at Chuck's afterwards, and it was just like, wow, this guy really cares. And he had a huge part of the culture of GT, and I'm really gonna miss that.